Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. As you can tell by the title, in today's video I'm going to be giving you guys a little bit of a historical breakdown. I know this might be something a little bit different than what you think I'd enjoy, but I actually really love fashion and costuming history. So today I'm going to be breaking down the iconic blue gingham dress worn by Judy Garland in the 1939 film by MGM, The Wizard of Oz. So what I'm going to basically be doing in this video is giving you guys not only a breakdown of the garment itself, but a little bit of historical context during the 1930s, 1939 to be exact, and what was happening in fashion trends and how that was influenced into the film making process and costume designing process for these iconic characters. Alright you guys, so we're going to do a quick little costume breakdown of Dorothy's iconic dress. So as you can see, it is made of a 1/4-inch blue gingham with some bias detailing along the bib and the straps, as well as some blue rickrack along the collar and the puffed sleeves. Now traditionally in the movie, it was a pinafore, which meant it was a white blouse over this sort of blue jumper with a bias strip along the hem, which you kind of saw in the beginning. It is such an iconic piece of movie memorabilia and such an iconic gingham dress. Alright, so starting from the very beginning, this movie was filmed at the MGM Studios in 1939, which means the famous costume designer known as Adrian, simply known as Adrian, was actually the head costume designer. That doesn't necessarily mean he was the one making them, but he was the one designing them and coming up with these sketches and the ideas. They had tons and tons of rooms and warehouses of seamstresses and tailors making all these costumes for these major stars. Now, this took place in 1939, the physical filming of the movie. However, the story, The Wizard of Oz, is supposed to be set on a, rural Kansas farm in the year 1900. So very, turn of the century, very early 1900s sort of high collar puff sleeve, which was actually kind of coming back in the late 1930s. Okay, so fashion in the 1930s, the late 1930s, was actually becoming a little bit more mainstream and something that people took a lot more pride in. Obviously, people took pride in their fashion for years and years and years. However, the late 30s is when we really start getting that iconic 1940s silhouette. Now, keep in mind, this is only 1 year before 1940, and it just is such a dramatic switch between the butterfly sleeves and the, dropped waistline and butterfly flutter hems of the 1930s to the more sort of wartime tactical male look for the women, meaning there were much sharper shoulder lines, women were oftentimes wearing suits, and the hair was actually starting to get longer. Now, obviously World War II happened in the 40s, so that is when women really had to start taking on more of a work role, so that is when pants and overalls and jeans started to become much more of a staple. However, in the 1939 film, Dorothy is seen wearing a puff sleeve dress like I'm wearing right now. This is almost an exact replica. I used a simplicity pattern. I will link it in the description of this video if you guys want to make your own, and let me know if you'd like to see a video of how I made this. Now this dress is a pinafore, which was actually very popular in the early 1900s for young girls. Now Dorothy at the time was 16 years old. Judy Garland, was 16 years old when she filmed this, but Shirley Temple was actually supposed to play Dorothy, which actually was a more accurate age range for Dorothy at that time. Dorothy was supposed to be a very, very young girl. So it was a much more youthful look, a pinafore with some gingham. Now, gingham is a very simple fabric and actually has been a very well-loved and well-used fabric. Specifically because of its really easily washable nature and because of how light and easy it is to actually work with in terms of sewing. Now, Adrian Greenberg actually went through several iterations of Dorothy's dress, and this actually was the final one. But midway through filming, in case you guys know a little bit about The Wizard of Oz, they obviously had to stop filming and they revamped costumes and makeup designs, and Dorothy's dress got wiped out with the tide with that one because it got a complete overhaul. At one point, Dorothy was blonde during filming and had a super long wig, so it was kind of all over the place. But obviously today I'm donning her Emerald City hair and makeup. which is when she gets a little bit more glam, and as you can see, the hair was very much influenced by the 40s fashion that was quickly around the corner in terms of a history timeline. Now, Adrian Greenberg based the costume design of Dorothy's dress off of the physical description that L. Frank Baum in the actual original The Wonderful Wizard of Oz book that was given. So it was described as, a gingham dress with puff sleeves and some little blue designs on it. And he obviously took with that what he would and created his own version of, in his mind, what that would be, specifically on Judy Garland, since you have to keep in mind the actor or actress that you are physically putting this garment on. Now, that takes me into some of the a little bit more touchy aspects of the costuming for The Wizard of Oz. So if you guys are triggered by anything like eating disorders and stuff like that, you might want to skip ahead just a little bit. I'll try and make it brief. Now, Judy Garland was 16 at the time during the filming of this movie. So that meant she was a fully developing young woman, which means her breasts were starting to come in and she had more of that adult female form that would have been fine if she was playing an older character, but because she was trying to play sort of like an 11 or 12-year-old, what they actually ended up doing was binding her chest and putting her in a very, sort of restricting corset in order to get her to have that flatter-chested younger girl look, and because they thought she was a little bit too overweight at the time and really were trying to get her to conform to that Hollywood starlet look, even though she was 16 and still a growing young woman and was doing her best, but was so happy she landed the role, she was willing to do anything, and honestly, she didn't really have a choice. Now, Judy Garland was also heavily dieted for this role. She was put on a diet of simply soup and crackers, and it was enforced by everyone at the studios, including the sort of common areas where she'd go and get lunch. That was the only thing they were actually allowed to serve her. She also was put on a bunch of different medications to help her wake up and go to sleep at night, and this was actually a pretty mainstream thing for starlets at the time because it was such intense hours of filming. And lastly, she was actually smoking 80 cigarettes a day, and that was part of her diet because in the 40s that was believed to, make you thinner and actually have health benefits, which we have now learned actually only results in things like lung cancer. Okay, even though we do have to recognize the sadder parts of the history of the costuming of Judy Garland and of The Wizard of Oz, we can still move on and appreciate some of the really special and uplifting aspects of this film. And one of them is that it actually was filmed part in color, which was very big for movies at the time. Now that brings me to the iconic ruby slippers. Now, if you're anyone like me who has been obsessed with the books for years and years since you were little, you will know that the ruby slippers were actually supposed to be silver, and that's the way it is written in the book. Now, in very early iterations of the script, you can see that the silver is crossed out and replaced with ruby. Now, this was to help advertise the fact that the movie was filmed in Technicolor, because, as you just saw, it looks really, really pretty when you have that bright ruby sparkling red against that really bright yellow, and it creates a beautiful contrast and was the perfect thing to advertise the Technicolor film that The Wizard of Oz was made with. Now, the bright colors that were used were not only intended to, display the Technicolor aspect of the film, but they were also trying to help lift the spirits of those affected by the Great Depression, because that was something that was going on during this time, and this movie was actually made with the intention of uplifting spirits, and it actually very much had that effect on people because it sort of brought everyone together, because it was something for the old and the young, just like that beautiful little piece of reading that you get in the beginning of the film that kind of says that this is for the young at heart and this film is for everyone. And it really was. It brought people together. People really started, this is kind of when pop culture started picking up too, because there were Dorothy dolls, there were little, miniatures of the characters that people were starting to buy. They were selling hair bows at like little 5-and-dime stores that you were able to buy that would give you that little, sort of token or remembrance of the movie and make you feel like you were a part of it too, because that is what I did just get a text from someone. I am so sorry. So sorry about that. Anyways, so yeah, it was definitely when pop culture was starting to pick up and people were really starting to want to be involved with their favorite films, and sort of when fandoms and all that kind of stuff started to come together. And The Wizard of Oz was actually a super huge smashing success, and people really, really liked it. And it was sort of the second biggest thing since Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which came out a little bit before. And that was sort of the same thing. People were so obsessed with it because it gave people that sense of hope, and it was, you know, sort of 2 hours of your day that you could go to and escape like Dorothy from a world of deep, dark browns and black and whites into a beautiful world of Technicolor with magic and wonder, where all you have to worry about is trying to get yourself to a magical wizard and solve some tasks. So it really was about uplifting people's spirits and bringing them together, and that it did, believe me. And it also has affected people from generations to come, because I myself watched this years and years ago when I was about 1 year old, and it has stuck with me ever since, and I truly can say it is one of my favorite movies, and probably is my favorite movie. I love everything about it. I went when I was really little with my grandparents to see the show when it came to the Pantages, the big Hollywood tour, so I've been obsessed with it since I was very, very little. Now, thank you guys so much for letting me give you a little bit of a breakdown of the historical context and everything. I really, really appreciate you guys watching this video. This is something a little bit different. Let me know if you like these more sort of educational historical videos as opposed to the sewing and makeup that I typically do. So I really, really hope you like it. I love getting to dress up as Dorothy. Perhaps this should be my Halloween costume for this year. I think I fit her persona and her looks very, very well. I love Miss Judy Garland. Now, thank you guys so, so, so much. I hope you are feeling safe and loved and know that you are worth it. And I will talk to you dolls later. Love you. Mwah.